And I shall zoom na him zoom for there and I relax it chill. So this one passport, all the apps.
Hello everyone, good evening. Hello, good evening. Can we all hear me? Please kindly respond if you can hear me. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Do you have people on this call?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much. Welcome to class, everyone. Please, I want to encourage us to reach out to our other co-mentees. We are starting the session right about now. Okay, welcome to week 4 of the Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program. Um, under the Data Privacy and Protection course. My name is Dennis Williams, and I will be your moderator for today. Right, so in today's class, we'll be discussing data breach management. I think we have come such a long way from week 1. In week 1, we just gave basic introduction into data privacy and protection, introduction to data privacy and protection. We discussed uh, principles, best practices. We just figured out our way around that. And then in week 2, we discussed data processing, collection, processing, and transfer. And in week 3, we discussed data subject rights. And right now we are handling data breach management. And I think we'll be having two mentors who will be helping us run through the session today. Um, so the two mentors will be the first of them being Mr. Emmanuel. I think we had Mr. Emmanuel, if I'm not mistaken, in week 2. Mr. Emmanuel is a legal professional and compliance specialist with a strong background in information technology law, regulatory compliance, sustainability, and data protection. He holds a Master's of Law in Information Technology from the University of Tartu, Estonia, and a Master of Business Administration from the Master of Business Information, Master of Business Administration rather, from York St. John University, United Kingdom. Called to the Nigerian bar, Emmanuel has extensive experience advising clients on corporate governance, contract law, and compliance framework, particularly in the areas of GDPR and NDPR data protection laws. So Mr. Emmanuel is here to join us, but we hope he is able to join us soon enough. Okay, our next mentor we are expecting on the call is Mr. Ridwan Badmos. Mr. Ridwan Badmos, unfortunately, he has not been able to join us in our previous class, but I think he has notified us that he will be able to join in today. So we expect him to join us soon. Mr. Ridwan Badmos, disciplinary privacy professional practice extend across various specialized technology domain. Please, if you have your mic unmuted, please can you kindly mute? various specialized technology law domains encompassing artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, and other cutting-edge technologies, being a certified information privacy technologist with the IAPP, and I'm a C1
Yeah,
trust fellow on privacy technology. Ridwan is at the forefront of translating privacy regulations into software. Please, if you have your mic unmuted, can you kindly mute?
Okay.
All right. So please, getting back to
Yeah. No, you're not finishing.
sorry,
That's how I'm doing it too.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, someone is saying I'm not audible. Sorry. Let me see if I can work on that. Is my audio much better now? Hello, is my audio much better now? Can we hear me? Okay. Wow. Let me see. Sorry, just give me a minute. Let me try to. So, Imabasi, I don't know. I think maybe it's maybe a challenge from your end because another message just confirmed that they can hear me. So maybe you can try to log out and then log in if that is an issue. So sorry, back to what I was sharing. Okay, I was already reading on our second mentor's profile. I said we'll be having two mentors in the session today. We'll be having Mr. Ridwan Badmos and Mr. Emmanuel Iwewe. Unfortunately, none of them have been able to join in for the call right about now, but what we'll be doing firstly is that we'll be taking your presentations first, right? And then subsequently, as they join in, they'll give feedback to your presentation, and then they'll give feedback to presentations, give their discourse, and then we take questions and call it a day, right? So hope that is fine by us. Do we have the presenter for group one in class? Let's take your presentation right about now while our mentors join in.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. Yes, good evening. We can
All
hear
right.
you.
My name is Munielu, and I'll be taking today's presentation for Group 1. I don't believe that the presenter or backup presenters are available, so that's why I'm taking today's presentation. If possible, could you help me with sharing these slides? I'm not sure I'll be able to do that on my end.
All right, so give me a minute too. Let me try and see how best I can help.
All right.
Sorry, just a minute. I'm trying to find it. Sorry.
But can you see my screen?
Oh, okay, okay. I can see your screen.
Okay, yes, all right. Oh, okay, so our topic is on data subject rights, the overview of data breach management. So here we're just going to be explaining the trends, risks, impact, and detection strategies. So the key points, so I'll be starting with why data breaches are important. They are from the word breach, and particularly because we're talking about data protection and privacy. A breach is obviously a threat to our protection, privacy, and protection of our data. That's the number one reason why they're important. And they are constantly growing, as we know, with more the innovation and evolution of AI. It is predictable that there will be more threats to those things or these things, which is why we have other branches like cybersecurity and others. So, but for the sake of this presentation, why data breaches are important, and we're going to be exploring a few things, setting trends and patterns, risk assessment and prevention strategies, analysis of data breaches, and then how to detect it, and techniques to essentially fight against it. So now we're moving on to data subject rights and legal frameworks. So the NDPA, as we all know, is the law that we use in Nigeria, the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023, which protects the rights of data subjects. Some of these rights are the rights to access, to rectify your information and to erase your information, to also ensure data portability. Data portability essentially means moving your data from one, for instance, let's say I would assume you want to move your data from one bank to the other, you should be able to do that. And if you have an objection to how your data is processed. So organizations have to comply with these rights so that they avoid legal liabilities and fines. So certain liabilities under the NDPA include fines of up to 10 million naira or 2% of their annual revenue for major violations. The NDPC is the organization that will investigate and see if truly a breach has occurred, and then impose the necessary penalties. Section 51 of the NDPA also empowers data subjects like you and I to litigate essentially, so sue for damages against when you realize that your certain aspect of your data has been misused or threats to your data have occurred. Now we're going to be analyzing some data breach trends. So I put some examples here.
Hi, Muni Ulua.
Yes.
I hope I pronounced the name properly.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, this is Redwald Badmos. I'm actually supposed to be one of the facilitators. So great you started your presentation, and sorry for cutting you short, but then I just thought, I mean, this is actually the best approach that I would have also supported. Like, I mean, in terms of you presenting first before I say anything, so that we can have. I mean, since you have the presentation already, and I believe you've done a lot of research on this. I mean, obviously, no, don't stop sharing. Continue sharing, please. I want you to continue. Yeah. So, you've done a lot of research. Obviously, I've gone through the slides, and they are actually great. So the approach is actually for you to go through the presentation, for everybody to have a foundational understanding, if not an in-depth understanding, as far as you've also participated in the research work, right? So I just wanted to make it more interesting and, ask, probably a few questions as you go.
Okay.
As you go ahead, as you proceed, you understand. So a question came to mind, and I think it is quite important because one of the ways I look at, I mean, I'm coming from a very diverse background. I'm not just a tech lawyer, but then I'm also I consider myself an expert in cybersecurity, or should I say, a cybersecurity professional, even technically wise, right? So I always, especially when we're looking at data protection, I always look at it from the point of view of different angles, different aspects of data protection working together. When I'm looking at data subject rights, I look at its relationship with data protection principles. I look at the relationship with legal bases, with different requirements like ROPA, DPI, and likes, how they work together and how the all together ensure the privacy of data subjects and the obligations of organizations as well. So when you can go back to the initial page where you were talking about data subjects rights and the legal frameworks for this. The question that came to mind is, I mean, interestingly, I like the way you were talking about it. Then I wanted to ask, for everyone to just look at or kind of consider the relationship between data subject rights and data breach, right? Or in another way, that's one. In another way, to put it in another way, or wording, maybe we could say, what is the relationship between not adhering or not carrying out the request of data subjects rights, like their request in terms of, we call it data subject access request or data subject rights, or data subject request, where a data subject, a customer, is requesting for access to their data, or is requesting for the portability for their data to be transferred, from that particular platform to another. So what is that? Of course, that is a breach of. It could be a breach of. I mean, there's a lot of nuances to data subject rights, but what is that? What is the relationship between data subject rights, between an organization, a company not adhering or not carrying out that request, right, with data breaches? Are they the same, or do they have any relationship? And I know both of them have consequences, right? But then how do you see both working out together? I mean, anybody could answer this. You could, or if you don't want to answer it now, I mean, you can just brainstorm about it and then we can discuss it at any point in time when anybody has, some insights into these two things. I don't think it's something that's I've seen a lot of discussion about, if any, but I just think it's something that we need to look at, to discuss as well, because there's consequences to not adhering or not. There's a particular word you use for an organization if they don't respond to data subjects requests. And of course, there's also a consequence to when there's a data breach, right? And I believe we're going to touch all of that. But sorry again for cutting you short, but I just think it's necessary for us to talk about that.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. I think that is a wonderful question. If I got the question correctly, it is that what is the relationship, or is there a connection between organizations not carrying out requests that data subjects ask for and data breaches? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. From what I understand, I believe that my very short or limited knowledge on data breaches, I would say that the only relationship I can see in the sense of whether it's a data breach, if they do not answer requests of a data subject, I wouldn't be able to say categorically that it is a breach. I would only be able to say that that the data breach itself would be the violation. But where a breach would occur, so to speak, would be where a data subject requests. I mean, you gave the example of data portability, where, like in this situation, they request that they want their information to be erased or to be forgotten. And it is following a particular breach or a particular that can now, considering, or what I'm trying to say is, when a breach occurs and then a data subject says, okay, I want my data to be erased, or I no longer want my data to be associated with your company, and then there's an issue, I believe that that's what would constitute the data breach. But I think if the organization simply fails to comply with the request, I don't know if that is in itself a data breach, but I do know it is a breach of the contractual agreement between the data subject and the data processor or controller. So that would be my answer for now. If anybody else decides to come in at any point, you're free to give your answer as well. But I will be, or is there anything you want to say before I continue?
No, that's fantastic. I think the Casas I had see, I mean, she can contribute to that, and I believe he can just continue. Then maybe I'll mention something and then we can continue.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next is analyzing data breach trends. So this slide, yeah. So yes.
Since Dorcas has her hands up, I think she has a
Okay,
contribution.
please cut in because of the device I'm using. I can't see if you raise your hand. So if you have anything to say, please just cut in. I will know that you want to say something.
Dorcas, please go ahead. Hello, Dorcas. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can
Can you
go
guys
ahead.
hear me?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you.
I just wanted to say I think I believe data breach is more of an unauthorized access to the subjects information and data, like from an outside source. While data subject rights breach, that one is more from the company. And that for that one, the data subject can sue the company or take legal actions against the company. But for a data breach, the company takes action against the person. It's more of a security breach from an outside source. That's all I have to say.
Okay, that's good. But I wanted to add to that I mean, I think the other question we also need to ask is, can a can a data subject, I mean, from what you said, can a data subject, a customer, sue? Let's use that word. I mean, there's a lot of actions you can take, against a company, but then can they sue for a company not responding to their request of data subject rights request, right? And can they also sue for when the data breach occurs and probably their information has been exposed, or it has been leaked, or it has been used, or as you said, has been accessed in an unauthorized manner. So those are some of the implications that we also need to kind of look at and read more on. So, and I think that is the kind of conversation I was trying to kind of lead us to, in terms of the implications of both. I mean, can they take us to the same outcomes, to the same consequences, right? So I see Anif's hands up. Please, you can go ahead, Anif. Yeah, Anif, you can go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Hi, good evening.
Yes.
Can
Good
everybody
evening.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You can go on.
Yeah, good evening, sir. So, I think as you've asked, there's actually a sort of connection between both, right? And I think the connection I see between breach of the data subject right and the data breach itself is that sometimes the consequences of a breach of data breach, is going to lead to a direct violation of the data subject's rights. Example, let us say it is a situation where a data subject has specifically requested enforcement of their rights to delete data. Example, their data come from a data controllers and database or system, whatever. But let us say the controllers refuse to uh, delete data, and then in the case of an eventual data breach, the person's data that the subject has requested to be deleted is also leaked outside, right? That's a direct violation of the data subject's rights, and I think in that situation, such a data subject is entitled to seek an action, right, for the enforcement of their data rights eventually. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you for that contribution. Just to manage time, I think you can go on with your presentation, Moni. Thank you so much for all the contributors. The Chaos Hanif and Moni as of Moni Yolua.
Yeah.
Right? Is that correct? So that just to ensure that I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, that's fine. Only everyone. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to analyzing data breach trends. So essentially, some of the targeted industries, as we know, would be financial services, obviously because of, money. There's obviously a lot of data to be mined in financial services, healthcare, retail as well, in the public sector, and critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure, whether that is energy, communication, power, any of that. Then some common ways of attack would be through phishing, which is common. I mean, we all know, the how so many people have lost their details through phishing. I know that I don't know how rampant it is now, but I do know that at one point, I also know phishing attacks have become more sophisticated. But I know that at one point, TikTok, not in Nigeria anyway, but there were some people, I think in the US citizens, that were falling prey to phishing attacks. So the attacker would essentially send them an email as though it was TikTok. It would have like a TikTok email and all of that. So because they were already in conversation with the actual organization, which is TikTok itself, they didn't bother to cross-check because it was so sophisticated to the extent that they didn't think there was it could have been an attack. So immediately they clicked on the link and all of that, they would lose their accounts, and like the person would be able to have control and access of their accounts and everything on their accounts. So attacks like that, then ransomware and insider threats, whether those are intentional or accidental, as we have spoken or had brief conversations about data breaches within organizations, we know that they can be incidental in cases where data breaches occur, and they could also be they could be accidental and they could also be intentional. Now, some global case studies that we've mentioned here, we have about in Nigeria, at least we know in Nigeria that we know at least one person who has lost their WhatsApp account, or whom their WhatsApp account has been hacked. So that is a popular example. So 19 million breached accounts in 2024. Then Equifax, we have 147 million records that were exposed. And then in Yahoo, between 2013 and 2014, about 3 billion accounts were affected. And obviously, as time goes on, we're going to be expecting possibly higher numbers if we are not educated on how to protect our data and we are not current with the attacks of the people who want to steal data, or the breaches that may occur. Then now we're going to be assessing some of these risks and ways to essentially prevent them. So some of the ways to assess the risks would be to identify vulnerabilities. For each and every one of us, we know that as data subjects, we have a right and we have a responsibility. The way we have a right, or we expect organizations to protect our data, is the same way we have that responsibility to protect our data. Right from your Google account, you should not have a simple password on your Google account, specifically because Google is where we store everything nowadays. So if you haven't changed your Google password in a while, I think you should try and do that. You should forget it and put a hard password there so that it guards against data breaches. Then to evaluate potential impact. So even on apps like, say, PiggyVest, Cowrywise, RiseVest, Bamboo, apps where you conduct financial services, you save your money, your bank apps, you should also be careful in regards to the kind of passwords you put there. You shouldn't just be, for instance, for iPhone users, the Face ID is quite weak. Face ID protection is very, very weak. So unlike Android devices that would use fingerprints, which is, I guess, harder to hack, but Face ID is quite easy depending on what their software sees as your face. If somebody has similar features, that person will be able to open your phone. So you should have, you should be able to keep your phone or your devices in places where or with, certain safeguards so that you're not a victim of attack. Obviously, this is not foolproof, as mistakes always happen, but just for what we can do as data subjects. Then for technical measures, as we said, things like encryption. I mean, encryption is quite high, but multi-factor authentication, like we have on WhatsApp, for instance. Then organizational measures. I know that on Twitter, there are certain jokes that they make now and again that in certain tech companies, they do those kind of trainings. Like they don't tell their employees, they just create, or what's that word? They put out like a phishing attack originating that the company is aware of anyway, and then they see who would fall victim to it as a way to train them or to guard against them. I know this because I know that there was one debate sometime, because I think they put the names of, or they listed the names of people who fell victim to the attack, as far as a way to, not a way to shame them, but a way to raise awareness that you need to be more aware of attacks like this. So yes, then compliance, obviously, with the NDPA. I put the GDPR here, but this does not apply in Nigeria, and the industry standards in general. So the next slide is essentially just a flow chart that shows essentially.
If I
Yes,
may, sorry again.
yes.
Going back, thank you. So going back to your slides that talks about assessing risks and preventing breaches. So I wanted to is it confirm or also kind of establish the differences between the assessment, the risk assessment that individuals, data subjects need to put in place, right? And that's of the organizations, the risk assessment methodologies that organizations also need to, kind of establish or put in place to ensure that their systems are not, breached or are not hacked. So, and if you've discussed a lot of things, and I think maybe I should just mention it as a comment in the sense that I think the best thing would be for, when you're talking about risk assessment methodologies, to probably differentiate between the of course, yeah, to differentiate between the steps or the activities or the controls, mechanisms, right, measures that data subjects, individuals could actually put in place could to ensure that their data are not leaked, or that people don't have unauthorized access to their accounts on different platforms, right? And then to also talk differently about what organizations need to do to ensure, and that goes deep, or that goes as far as talking about the terms, the technical and organizational measures that organizations need to put in place. So essentially what I'm just trying to say there is the best thing would be, to ensure that you're passing that message separately, differently. Of course, there might be some sorts of what's it called, some sorts of lapses. Using lapses, interlapping, right? When, especially when you're talking about encryption. So we've
We can't hear you anymore, if you can hear us. Okay, so while we get him back,
talk about
okay.
how individuals and probably how the organizational risk assessments, we're thinking about cybersecurity or talking about data protection specifically. But I just wanted to make that dichotomy.
Okay, to be clear, I mentioned the use of WhatsApp. I mentioned your two-factor authentication. I mentioned, and
between risks to organizations. Please, you can continue.
so
Thank you.
if I mentioned WhatsApp, or you remember me mentioning WhatsApp, that has the aspect of me mentioning WhatsApp had nothing to do with WhatsApp, the organization, but you as a WhatsApp user to have your two-factor authentication. I believe everybody would have that. I also mentioned your Google account, that if you have not updated your Google password in a while, because your Google account is what you use to log into, at least for me, majority of your apps. So instead of creating a new password for each app, they give you the option to log in with your email, to log in with your Google account. So if your Google account is what you use primarily, it is important that you take the appropriate measures, like constantly updating your Google passwords to strong passwords. And strong passwords would include, uppercase, lowercase letters with symbols, and with like mixing it up. We should know what strong passwords look like at this point. So that is for the user. Then I mentioned for the organization as well. That's why I gave the example of the whole training, that they train their staff as well so that they can recognize certain attacks to prevent it from happening. Then that's where the employee training comes in. Then having response to attacks or breaches when they happen is also the organization's duty, so that they can stop further attacks from happening, or to prevent it if it has happened before is the organization's work. I know that we see from time to time that WhatsApp, when they roll out new features in their app, they give you a breakdown or they send it to you via like a message. Before, it used to be on your status, that you would see WhatsApp having the status, you click on it, and then you're able to see the new features. Now they just put it in a chat so that you can see the new features. Those are the kind of things organizations can also do in regards to how to educate their users as well, to prevent certain data breaches. So I think that helps to clarify the differences in regards to organizations and data subjects. Now, the short-term and long-term impact of data breaches, certain financial impacts, as we earlier discussed, that it is possible for data subjects to sue the organization if their data has been breached, because it is the responsibility of the organization to ensure that their data is safe. They're trusting them with private and sensitive information. So if that information is now open to the public, then they should sue, or they have the ability or the right to sue. So the average cost of a breach per the Ponemon Institute is $3.92 million. So it is quite expensive. Then we also have the reputational damage, which was shown in the example of Equifax's 35% stock drop, a loss of customer trust and brand value, and then a PR crisis because people no longer trust that. Another example, bringing it home to Nigeria, would be Glovo. I think there was a time, if I'm remembering correctly, that Glovo had some issues in regards to customer data, whether that had to do with the numbers you give to the drivers or certain information stored on the app. Another example, even though that has not occurred yet, but I know that some of us have our cards saved on certain apps. So if you use Childec and you have your card saved on the app or your wallet or any of that, if that information is made available in a data breach, then obviously you're not going to want to use the app anymore because you've seen that it is not safe, at least for sensitive information. So that's that. Then operational disruptions, there's loss of productivity, and then obviously the app may have to go down for the period in which the data breach occurs or has occurred, in order to rectify the damage at the back end. Then we're moving on to advanced detection technologies. So number one, we have the intrusion detection systems. We have two, signature-based and anomaly-based. So signature-based, it detects threats like malware signatures. Then we have anomaly-based. So if there are certain irregularities in regards to certain things, then the system is going to flag it. Then we have security information and event management system. It aggregates and analyzes data for real-time threat detection. Then it also integrates with the intrusion detection systems to monitor data or the advent of the possibility of data breaches. Then we have machine learning and AI to reduce false positives, as well as enhance accuracy in identifying patterns and to predict threats. Then we have threat intelligence sharing. An example is the SANS Institute Collective Defense Model, where organizations are able to share intelligence. Bringing it back to Ridwan's first point about in connecting cybersecurity with the data breaches. So with cybersecurity and the way the world is going, that may be another way which was maybe fought in the nearest future. So when we talk about intelligence sharing, so companies as well as organizations and maybe even now, I don't know any example off the top of my head, and countries sharing information in regards to data breaches. So some recent breaches in Nigeria have been, we've had Fidelity Bank that was fined 555.8 million naira for non-compliance with the NDPA. Then we have Meta, which was fined $220 million for data mishandling by the FCCP. Then certain regulatory responses, I've mentioned this earlier as well, that the NDPC is the organization in charge of the enforcement of, ensuring that organizations are following the law in regards to the protection of data subjects, as well as improving awareness to the public on how to safeguard their data. Now, legal liabilities and enforcement action. So certain consequences under the NDPA include fines, litigation, as you've said, civil litigation of data subjects to sue, which answers that question completely. The long-term organizational effects, reputational harm, operational disruptions. I've explained this already, which is why I am not going through it in detail anymore. Then best practices and key strategies for effective data breach management. So to prevent it, or ways to prevent it, would be to conduct regular risk assessments for organizations. By the way, this is for organizations, not for individuals. Regular risk assessment and employee training, and to implement encryption and access controls. Then to detect it, they can employ or deploy the intrusion detection systems, the SIEM, the AI-driven monitoring tools, and participate in threat intelligence sharing. Then response, they ought to develop an incident response plan, which I would relate this to or connect this to organizations that are in charge of our data, that you should know that organizations that don't have an incident response plan, whether that's a PR response immediately a data breach happens, apologizing and telling you that they will rectify the breach or rectify the issues or the damage that has been done. It's not an organization you possibly want to have your data, and it's an organization you might want to remove your data completely from. Because if they do not have a good incident response plan, then they should not have the ability to control or process your data. Then recovery, they can conduct post-breach audits so that they can improve their defenses and restore customer trust through accountability, transparency, and the likes. Obviously, as we know, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, data breaches are inevitable. The way evil is inevitable and good is inevitable. These things are going to happen. The point is to ensure that we do our best to prevent it from happening, know the signs of threats or breaches, and then to have a good response when they do happen, like I mentioned earlier. So our final point is that data breaches are important, and it's our duty to ensure we know what they are, how we can stop them, and guard against them. So these are the members of my group who contributed to the presentation this week, and that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Dennis,
much. Venice, let me quickly give 2 comments. I mean, in terms of a couple of contributions relating to the presentation. I mean, it's fantastic, and I love the way the presentation itself was structured. So well done again. I think 2 things I just wanted to talk about is, I think, in terms of why just looking at data breach management from the legal aspects is not enough, and that is the reason I also appreciate the slide on advanced detection technologies, right? And this is one of the areas I'm also kind of I specialize in. I mean, from the technical side of things, I have I know I have nothing less. I mean, up to 5 different certifications. I know I have at least 2 or 3 cloud certifications from Microsoft Azure relating to technologies, advanced technologies actually for preventing uh, you know for preventing incident management generally. All right, where you talk about. I mean, you mentioned some of these terms. From SIEM, right? That's the SIEM, right? To SOAR, right? SOAR and EDR, extended detection experience or something like that on Microsoft's cloud. That's Microsoft Azure. So sometimes, so I'm not advise. I won't recommend in any way for. I mean, it's just my own interest. That's why I actually went so deep. But then I won't advise any lawyer or any unless you have such the same deep interest in technology to go that deep. But then it's very important for you to have a foundational understanding of how some of these technologies work. And that will take me to the next point I want to make as regards developing skills, knowledge, and capabilities in this area. Because when you're dealing with, I mean, there are many ways you could come in when it comes to data breach management, specifically on that cybersecurity or data protection, because that's one of the major connection between data protection and cybersecurity. Of course, there's a lot of connections, and the biggest one is, of course, when we're talking about data protection. I think two ways. When we're talking about data protection principles, of course, all of us know that the sixth data protection principle is right confidentiality and integrity, which are two of the CIA triad, which is the objective of cybersecurity itself. So confidentiality and integrity, and then when you're talking about the general obligations of companies when it comes to data protection, is one of the major things that all data protection laws have is terms. Again, I like calling it terms, technical and organizational measures. And of course, when you're talking about organizational measures, you have administrative as well, which include a lot of things that has to do with cybersecurity. But when you're talking about technical and organizational, there's a lot of things that has to do with cybersecurity measures. All right, because when you're talking about technical mainly, even though we now have, I mean, not now, we've always had for a very long time things called privacy enhancing technologies that are specifically built for privacy protection. All right, but they have a lot of things to do. They have a lot of I mean, development of these specific privacy technologies comes from a lot of technologies that form the basis of cybersecurity in the first place. I'm talking about cryptography, encryption. Right, you hear about homomorphic encryption, which is specifically for privacy protection. I don't want to go to a very high ground, not to lost lost you, but then I think you can just note all of these things. And if you need any specific, if you need any any further explanation on any of these things, or if you maybe forgot anything I've said, you can just feel free to ask any questions, or put a question on the chat, right, so that I can maybe type it there. But where I'm actually going to, the reason I'm saying all this is the fact that we've gone past the stage where legal knowledge is never enough, right? And you can't just stick to just what does the law says under the data protection law. I mean, in terms of, because the major thing the law says when it comes to data breach, I mean, when you're talking about data protection laws, is in terms of notification period, right? That you have to report the data breach to either the NDPC, right, either the NDPC and the data subject, or just the NDPC, depending on how on the nature, right, and the nature and the risk of the data breach, right? So where I'm actually going to use that, I think I was talking about where you could actually come in when there's a data breach. It could be as, I mean, when you're working in a law firm, it could be for you to advise a company, maybe clients, or a company, that has experienced a data breach, and they want you to guide them in terms of the legal obligations. And that is what's I think Moniolo has discussed a lot about this. Particularly, I think the next group will talk more about what the law says about about data breaches, the steps or the actions you need to take. But then I think there's a lot of things that comes along with those specific provisions of law, and there's a lot of things that has to do with many of these case laws that Moniolo has also discussed with us. So you understand the reactions of DPAs, data protection authorities, to such happenings, to such incidents or events, and how a company that has a similar experience could address such issues, right? So that's one way. I mean, when you're working in a law firm, so it could be pretty legalistic. So, but notwithstanding, I think the best thing that will make you stand out is the understanding of some of those technical details as well. Because when you're able to discuss, I mean, this happened recently with a client in the law firm I work in, Society Technology Law, Data Protection and AI Governance department, and there was actually an incident, and I mean, because of my technical background, I was really, I mean, it was the conversation with the client was actually seamless, because I understand you will understand what the client is talking about and what they really need. Past I mean, this is beyond the data protection requirements, right? Something that would go as much as, because there's something called disaster recovery and business continuity when it comes to the other side of data breach under cybersecurity. You won't see a lot of that on that data protection per se, but that's these two things: disaster recovery and business continuity are very key to the cybersecurity aspects of data breach management, and that is the reason you need to look at data breach management holistically, right, and not just look at the legal aspect and then if it can be, because you need to see how you can have a good conversation with technologists and see how you can integrate the legal requirements into the technical details that they work with, how to break it down for them to understand how to implement what you've given them, so that they don't even put everything in this array. I mean, your advice, so that it's aside the fact that you are particular about the business of your clients, you're also trying to, I mean, if you do that, if you're taking the steps to go beyond the legal aspects of data breaches, I think you're also kind of protecting your own work, so that it's not going to be it's not going to be put aside, or it's not going to be as I said, put in this area. All right, so so that's one aspect from the law firm, and I think another major aspect is where you are maybe a legal counsel within the organization. I think you can have a good understanding or a good assumption of what could happen, even from, because you're now going to be working. You're a legal counsel, of course, but then you need to the organization might not go to a law firm again, but then they might need to work with you, since you are working with colleagues. I mean, in terms of all the people from the different departments, you have more insight into, you are supposed to have more insight into the way the systems of the organization actually works. But and I believe the organization would also be expecting a lot from you, and that would also would extend to how you're drafting different policies and procedures. You might have an incident response and breach management policy, and then you might also have to. Moniolo had spoke about the exercises that organizations could actually put out sometimes, in without informing the staff, right? Without informing the organization staff, just to ensure that they're doing the right thing, ensuring that they are exercising or ensuring that the way they deal with not just data subjects data, but the way they operate generally is aligns with ethical practices, aligns with good security engagement or good security practices, right? So a legal counsel or maybe a legal counsel or maybe a legal associate in a company, in any kind of company, would really need those skills and those abilities to collaborate with different units, business units or business departments. And so I was talking about drafting policies, right, procedures, and then also kind of carrying out training for staff generally. And I've also seen a lot of lawyers transitioning from the legal domain to technical domain, like trying to be, well, I mean, embedding themselves into how this work in the real sense. So that's also some sort of, I mean, this is also a very, I mean, a very nimble way of transitioning if you want to enter the technical space. And one of the areas that is not, I mean, when we start talking about the issues that comes with AI, I mean, how AI could actually pose lots of risks to the workforce. I mean, to the workforce, to workforce generally. I think one of the areas that I see that is still, to a large extent protected is the cybersecurity domain, because there's a lot, I mean, you still need to do a lot of things to ensure that the AI models or different AI systems are protected. So when it comes to cybersecurity, the technical aspects of cybersecurity, and you've just already spoken about some of these advanced advanced technologies, right, for maybe detection or whatever terms we have under breach management. So I think there's a lot of, what I'm just saying essentially is that there's a lot of opportunities out there that if you want to transition, but if you're not even transitioning, there's a lot of things to really learn for you to have hands-on experience and capabilities when it comes to data breach management issues. So back to you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ridwan. Thank you so much for all your shared thoughts and your comments on the presentation. We really hope that the mentees were picking up on everything that you were sharing. And thank you, Moin, for your presentation. Well done to you and to your team members for putting it together. All right, so please, we'll be taking presentation from Group 2. Are the members of Group 2 ready for their presentation? Let's take a presentation as soon as possible. All right, thank you, Ine Suma.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Machi Erugo, and today we'll be presenting on data subject rights as with a specific focus on incident response planning, legal and compliance, regulatory compliance, cybersecurity awareness and training, and post-breach remediation and recovery. So basically, data protection simply refers to any situation whereby personal data is accessed, disclosed, or altered without authorization. And so going into incident response planning, this basically refers to the process of developing policies and procedures that guide how an organization responds to a data breach. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. I can see your screen.
Okay, so incident response planning basically refers to the process of developing policies and procedures that guide how an organization responds to a data breach when there is a data breach. And the main goal is basically to ensure that the organization can act quickly, they can contain the breach, they can reduce the damage and comply with the legal obligations. So this now brings me to the key components of incident response processes. So there are different processes. We have preparation stage, we have the identification stage, we have the containment and eradication stage, we have communication and reporting, and then there's the lesson learned stage as well. So basically, preparation is just the process that surrounds how do I put it now? It involves creating a computer security incident response team. So that's basically legal team, IT, HR, for example, and training them to be able to prepare for when there is, to be able to identify and respond to a data breach. So after this preparation stage, we move over to the incident identification stage, sorry, where basically there are tools that will be used to identify or detect any unusual activity and identify the potential breaches that have occurred. Then we move over to the containment and eradication stage. So basically here, the organization identifies the affected systems, and then they remove anything that has been damaged, or they isolate it basically to now eradicate any damage that has occurred to prevent further data loss. And after that, we have the communication and reporting stage. And in this stage, the organization basically identifies, no, they notify the regulators basically, so the regulatory bodies, the affected individuals as well, and stakeholders basically, to let them know about the data breach. So there are mandatory timelines for this as well, but we'll get into it in the next slide. And then the last one is a lessened learned stage. And here, organizations basically review the incident and strengthen its system to prevent further data breaches. Now, moving over to the regulatory compliance systems and the core data protection laws. Here, this is basically, there are some legal requirements that the law has laid out, and several laws regulate how organizations must respond to data breaches. So we have the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. We have the California Consumer Privacy Act, which we have the California Consumer Privacy Act, and then we have the Nigerian Data Protection Act as well. So for example, under the GDPR, organizations are expected to notify regulatory authorities within 72 hours of becoming aware of that breach. So immediately they are aware, they are supposed to pass it over to the regulatory authorities. And then any other development that comes after that, they inform the regulatory authorities about it. Now we have the industry specific. Okay, sorry, before I move over to industry specific compliance, under the laws as well, there are several obligations that the organizations are expected to follow. So for example, after they have notified about the breach to the regulatory authorities, which I mentioned that under the GDPR, there's 72 hours time frame. There's also them showing accountability and basically showing the efforts that they are taking to rectify the data breach as well. Now, for the industry specific compliance, we have the financial sector, which basically there's a framework called the Digital Operational Resilience Act, which imposes a strict requirement on risk management and incident reporting as well. And then there's the critical infrastructure sector. Under this one, this basically is also another sector, and they have their own specific regulations for how they are to comply with data breach and manage the data basically. And then there's also the healthcare system, or the healthcare sector. In the what's it called? In the evolving landscape where we have AI data and AI mixing up with health data as well. There's also the need for data breach management. So that's also very important. Now, moving on to cross-border breaches. This basically deals with across the borders, basically outside Nigeria, and like interacting with data outside of the country, right? Organizations that basically have interactions with multiple countries, they must also apply or comply with the different legal systems in these different countries. So there is the onward transfer risk, which looks at organizations must evaluate the data disclosures to third parties, creating risks, especially increased scrutiny on onward data transfers. So basically, regulating how organizations relate with other countries, and they must follow the specific guidelines in those other countries as well. So where they share those data, they must, they must inform the countries or the specific parties that are in that their data is being transferred to. Now, the best practices for 2026 compliance. To remain compliant, organizations must adopt certain best practices, and this basically includes a fixed reporting timeline. So they must maintain strict reporting timelines. Earlier, I mentioned the 72-hour framework. So it must reflect the 30-day, 72-hour, or even 24 hours reporting requirements. There's also a proper classification of sensitive data. They must maintain a strict inventory of sensitive data, and they must be categorized as well. And then there's also vendor management systems as well. Organizations must also continuously monitor their systems and ensure that third-party risks are basically effectively managed. Now, moving on to cybersecurity awareness and training. Now, one very important aspect of data breach management is the human factor. And this human factor basically, which looks around like human behavior as well, is it plays a significant role in cybersecurity risk. And some common examples that we would find, we have weak passwords, phishing attacks. We also have social engineering, and then the unsafe use of Wi-Fi, like public Wi-Fi. And so to address this, organizations must invest in continuous cybersecurity awareness and training programs as well. And this basically includes continuously educating the masses on cybersecurity, informing their employees as well, educating their employees, stimulating real life situations, real life scenarios, and promoting a caution. So basically encouraging individuals to pause before they click, things like that, so that people don't just agree to certain things online without understanding what it is basically. So those are some trainings and awareness that must be done. Now, post-breach remediation and system recovery. After a data breach has occurred, the focus shifts from trying to remedy it and to moving over to recovery. And so the first step is to understand what has happened. And this basically includes identifying the type of data that is involved, how individuals were affected, and the risk that has occurred. The next stage would be the organization must act with transparency, notifying regulators and affected individuals as well, and complying with the laws. So the GDPR, the Nigerian Data Protection Act. After this, the organizations are to fix the issue by strengthening their systems. So after that has happened, they would try to fix their systems, correct the vulnerability. So they would assess how did this breach occur, what is the thing that led to this breach occurring, and try to fix their systems and correct those vulnerabilities and remove the threats. And then the system will be restored and operations continue as normal. Now, the post-incident review. This basically is a very critical stage in the process of everything. At this stage, the organization conducts a detailed analysis of the breach. So they identify the root cause, they assess the risks, they review the effectiveness of the response, and they implement corrective measures, like I mentioned before. Now, to conclude, I'll just say that data breach management is not a one-time response. It's something that organizations must continuously do. Data can be breached at any moment, so there must be like systems and would I say measures, mechanics that will be set up to be able to prevent subsequent breaches or to prevent a breach that would occur in the future. Effective data management is not just defined by the absence of a breach, but it's basically in the organization's speed response, their strength, and then their ability to respond to the breach effectively. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. Well done to you and to your team for such a wonderful presentation. That's from Ines Noma. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Ridwan, do you have feedback for our mentees? And would you like to just share your thoughts overall on what you prepared for us ahead of the session, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis. I think I've said a lot earlier. So I think I'll just make a couple of comments on the presentation, and then I think we can take questions, so I can address any questions coming from the participants. So I think I mentioned earlier that I mean mainly most of the things that we need to know as lawyers, or even as people trying to manage data breach incidents or events, have actually been covered across the two presentations. Although this was, I have the part when I looked at this particular, this last presentation, I thought that it could have actually been done better. In terms of the structure, it's just the structure. Everything is, all the information there is quite helpful, useful, and relevant. But then it's just about the structure. In terms of how I know some issues were discussed, and then they were kind of repeated in some other slides, down below. So, in terms of when you're talking about, what is obtainable in other jurisdictions as well, I think it would have been better if, you just put everything together, and then you also talk about the relationship between the different ways, things work across jurisdictions, and what we could also learn from other jurisdictions, especially because your focus mainly, I believe, for everyone is the NDPA and the guide, right? That provides for specific, and I don't think I saw any references to the specific, because I believe there are schedules, a couple of schedules that mainly talks about breach management or breach incidents, data breach incidents in the guide itself. So I'm not sure I saw anything relating to that. So I would want to call everyone's attention to look at the schedules of the guide. The guide is actually very important regulatory instrument that could really help you to do tabletop exercises when it comes to data breach incidents within the country, right? So that's mainly the feedback I have, for the last presentation. And so I was saying that the focus should actually be, Nigerian jurisdiction. And then I think another thing I remember that was mentioned is, and that's really interesting, if you have business, if you operate businesses or business across borders, then you might be looking at at implementing different laws, different data protection laws, right? And some of these laws have different requirements when it comes to data breach, in terms of how you would address maybe in notifications and the likes, the timelines for notifying the regulator, and the timeline for notifying data subjects as well, your customers. But I think the best way to go about this is, as it is for other parts of the law. When it comes to certain requirements, we have different requirements on that, several obligations as well. So the best thing would be, especially when it comes to consents, and when it comes to opt-in and opt-out mechanisms, particularly about consent. Consent. So they are different. So you find California saying that you have opt-outs mechanism. You can have opt-out mechanism in the sense that they can process your data, and then you'll be the one to opt out. But in most jurisdictions, you'd find, including Nigeria, you find that you need to get an opt-in consent before you start processing. The same thing for data breach. So the differences. So the best way to go about that is to, we always talk about, sometimes it might not be as easy as adopting the strictest test or the strictest requirements, in this manner. I mean, if you have because I think there's a specific provision or a specific explanation of what the California, I mean, from January 1, because I know there's new requirements, from California regarding data protection and specifically cybersecurity measures to put in place. So that was discussed in the last time presentation. But what I'm trying to say is that if you have a 72 days notice and then you have maybe 72 hours rather notice in a particular jurisdiction, and then you have a longer period in other jurisdiction, what you could do, I mean, sometimes if depending on how the organization is structured, you could either go for the shortest day or shortest hour across all jurisdictions, or you may opt for doing it in accordance with the different jurisdictions if you have the resources. So maybe you have and then it won't be an issue for you, right? So the structure is actually very important. So what you could do, as I said, all the many of the information you need is already embedded in these two presentations. But for the second presentation, what you could actually do is just to see how you can, and I believe I can help you with that, right? To see how you can actually structure all these things. Especially there's a particular segment that talks about and I actually love it. I mean, I think it's not the post-breach remediation and system recovery. I'm looking at the slides here. I think it is the post-breach remediation and system recovery. And I don't think it's just the post-breach, because I think it also talks about specific way. So it's not the post-breach at all. Okay, but I think I understand what you meant there in terms of it's because you said post-breach remediation, so it looks like it's after the maybe after you've remediated the issue that happened. So that is what would happen. But in terms of when you're looking at the breach recovery process itself, so some of these steps that you've mentioned under the post-breach remediation and system recovery actually covers what you're meant to do immediately the breach occurs, even before you find where the breach source. You might want to, depending on the scenario, on the case, you might actually want to issue statements to notification, right, to your customers, or to ensure that they're protecting their data. If there are specific processes or specific steps that they need to take to ensure that their data is further protected, that is if there is a high risk of impact, right? So just look at that. I mean, as I said, the presentations are quite good. So you just need to kind of segment, especially for the last presentation. You need to segment the different topics or the different areas that have been covered, that has been discussed. So to save our time, I'll stop there. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to speak to those questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Badmus, for helping us run through today's topic. We discussed database management, and Mr. Badmus was able to highlight key areas within the presentations, and also talk about how organizations can set up themselves to manage those data breaches. So we will be taking questions. If you have a question for Mr. Badmus that you would like to ask, please kindly do all by the show of hands. Let's take your questions as quick as possible. And I think we can call it a day after that. Do we have questions in class? You can go ahead and also indicate by raise of hands, or you can send it into the chat box. Let's take your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Okay,
Ridwan.
see. Okay, yeah, Obioma, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ridwan. I've learned a lot today. So my question is this. We have seen a case scenario where an agentic AI deleted a company's sensitive data, and then we see one of the remedies is fining the company, but there are cases where fine is not enough for the damage that has been done. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, just to answer your question very well, could you come again with the question? Could you repeat it? I got it, but I didn't. I just want to ensure I get all the all the words you used.
Okay, I said that there's this case scenario where an agentic AI deleted a company's data.
Okay.
Yes, then we see one of the remedies is fining the company heavily. But what of circumstances where fine is not an adequate remedy for the situation? What do you have to say about that?
Okay. Okay. Thank you. It's actually a very interesting question, and thankfully I said you should ask the question again because I didn't see agentic system or agentic AI the first time. So I even thought it was a natural person, an individual or the organization itself. So ordinary. So there's a lot of issues to be addressed in that question itself. So the first thing, and of course, the first thing is in terms of who is going to be accountable, for that because it's the agentic system, but then or the agentic AI. But of course, we understand that it's the company that's deployed the agentic AI, and then they should take responsibility for that. But anyways, so that is, of course, that is the conclusion to be made, and I believe that's the conclusion anybody will make for now. But then it could be, I think, two things. It could be depending on the circumstances. It could actually be more complex than that. It could be wider, further than that. The question of who is accountable. But then on the other hand, I also want you to have it in mind that there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of discussion surrounding. I mean, you would have heard about some of these AI being accountable for some of its activities, right? So I think that's a very good area to look at. I've seen a lot of projects, a lot of conversations around this. I mean, big conversations, right? I mean, I've seen fellowship where what they're really talking about is the digital mind. So, and it's interesting to see where this is actually going to. But then to come back to cybersecurity, where there's and these are new. There are new events coming up, and that is the more reason. So that's why I said it's a lot. There's a lot of things related to that question. We also need to see how we can develop. We can develop our AI. Sorry, I said AI. Yeah, AI legal frameworks. We can call it that way, or develop legal frameworks for AI as well to guide AI. So and but then to come back to address your question specifically. So of course there are, and that is why, I mean, there are many areas to data protection or cybersecurity issues, specifically data breach as well, especially when you are drafting contracts. That is another way where data breaches comes in. And this has to do with limitation of liability, indemnification, and a lot of, so sometimes you would have data protection clauses in an agreement, and sometimes you would have a data protection addendum or a data protection agreement separate that will stipulate provisions for these kind of issues, right? And sometimes you would see and that is where, I mean, I just want to make some sort of connection with IP where there is I'm trying to remember a particular point of law, a particular legal area or legal aspects or aspects of law where you regard issues happening as if the remedies that are provided for that, like you could say that the remedies that have actually been provided for that particular defaults happening is not enough for that particular issue, then there could be specific there could be specific performance. I mean, there are many other things that could happen. But then I'm not sure if specific performance and other legal remedies could be applicable to some of these issues, right? So because going back to the issue, I mean the way the issue happens itself, it could be, I mean, because you mentioned an individual being affected. So and there might be some different stages in these circumstances. And what I mean by that is it could be that it's between a particular service provider and an individual, or it could be maybe an AI system company, an AI company providing their services to a service provider who now provide their own services directly to an individual, right? So if it is in that case where you find organizations, this happening between organizations, so what's in that instance? So I just want to kind of cover a lot of things that could occur. So where you have that 3-level circumstances where you have an AI model company or an AI company providing services to a service provider, and the service provider providing services to a direct consumer. Then what could happen sometimes is that the service provider, so that's where indemnity would occur. The AI company would have to kind of indemnify the service provider to kind of take up the case. You understand? Because in that regard, the reliefs, the remedies might actually not suffice, right? I'm just trying to come up with different things that could happen. But most times, what's the best would actually be for such instances to be provided for in the agreement, right? Because that is what is going to easily address this kind of issues. That's okay. When there's a data breach, has occurred and it affects individuals, this will be the recourse, right? So, and a lot of contract clauses would come into place. I mean, as I mentioned, indemnification, limitation of liability, and specifically data protection clauses or data protection addendums will help with this. So, and we need to, so I mentioned earlier that that's why we need to start evolving our our legal frameworks. So I wanted to say data protection because we have data protection laws affecting, we are applying data protection laws to AI systems now. So we need to, if it is either having a data protection law that is now evolved, that is more developed to undo these issues properly. I think we even need it in the first place. So anyhow, even if you're going to be having, the second thing I wanted to say is if we're going to be having AI specific laws as well, just like we have the EU AI Act, right? So but then these are, because it would really have a ripple effect, not a ripple effect across beyond jurisdiction Nigeria, but ripple effect in terms of a lot of things happening. You could have contracts already, different, maybe an SLA, service level agreements between companies, and then they might now need to, because of that law, that would require, even if it doesn't require specifically that you need to have an AI specific clause in your agreements, you would understand that there's a risk here, there's a liability here that you need to provide for, and then you start integrating AI specific clauses that would address such issues in your agreements with between organizations. So so there's a lot of issues to look at, when it comes to that part, that your specific question. But then I believe, I really hope that you will brainstorm on the different issues that comes into place, because you need to understand AI in the first place and understand how agentic AI works, and so also kind of understand the kind of risks or the kind of harm it could pose to people, right? And there's that area where you also think of adjusting risk, or maybe transferring risk, and saying that because sometimes, and that is where, I mean, if you look at AI systems, you would find some sort of disclaimer saying that you should always check. I mean, because we have AI hallucinations, so you don't because in that case, sometimes it might be that the agency, the activities or the activity that the agentic AI has taken, or has kind of, I mean, the risk that it has posed, or the risk it has actually posed to an individual might actually not be even liable to to any kind of damages, so to say, because maybe in the terms of agreements, or the terms and conditions, you might have it there that the individual or the organization might really will be the ones to kind of ensure that no risk is coming out of taking certain activities. Just like I mentioned, if you're using AI systems like ChatGPT, Gemini, or the likes, you might not be able to. Or I mean, if you have issues about AI hallucination, you might not be able to sue ChatGPT, that's OpenAI, and Google, for such incidents, because they've already kind of say you're liable for that, typically. So those are the issues that I think we need to really look at. I just saw your hands up, Imabasi. I think you can go on. I hope that helps. I think that was Obi, am I right?
Yes, sir, that helps so much.
Okay, thank you. I think it was also Imabasi that put the question in the chat box. I don't know if that's the same question you want to ask, or you might want to ask directly. You can please talk.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for taking us on this week's topic. I already dropped a question in the chat box, which is the difference between data breach and security breach, and if it could be used interchangeably. Then that is that one. Then I have another one. I think earlier on you were addressing on how broad data protection is, and I think different sides people could take on. But I think my network failed, so at some point I couldn't hear you any longer. But I want to ask. I don't know if you addressed it before, but I want to ask if, like, for us here taking on this internship and mentorship program, are there certifications for us to take to be, like, from here, can anyone just go on to be a data protection officer, or there's like a certification course that we can take? And is it from there that let me just say we, or let me say myself, can start to maybe take on roles like write a privacy policy, or are these certifications just in place for us to be more like call ourselves data protection experts or maybe officer? I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, great questions. I'll quickly answer the first one, and I will answer the second question as well. So data breaches and security breach, I'll say yes and no. They can be used interchangeably, but security breach is broader than data breach. So when you say data breach, you're specifically talking about data, and mainly it's going to be personal data. But it could also be, I mean, we have other data aside, personal data, or we can even have sensitive personal data as well. But then mainly they are categorized under the same brackets, like, data breach. But then we have other data like confidential data that might actually be business data, right? And other type of data. So we're talking about data specifically, anything that relates to information. So it could be personal information, it could be business or system information. But then when you're talking about the data breach, it means the unauthorized access to this kind of data, right? But when you're talking about security breach, it is all encompassing, because it could be a breach that affects the system. I mean, in terms of the network, or it could be and when you're thinking about the network, it's quite wide as well. You could talking about we have when you transfer when data is being moved from one place to the other, right? So, or it could be that you're talking about the infrastructure of the company itself, right? Maybe their systems, their applications, right? Making it malfunction, or even not able to access, those platforms. So those are the different ways that security breaches could happen. So it could be the environment, the system environment, or the technical environment of the organization. So this actually goes beyond data. So it's more, it's broader right? So you can use them interchangeably. Sometimes you could say security breach, that covers data breach. But when you say data breach, you specifically mentioned, you're specifically talking about data, and that does not, that's different from when a network or maybe a system or an application of an organization is affected. I hope that helps. So it can be used interchangeably, and at the same time, it may not be used interchangeably depending on the on the context, on the circumstances. So then talking about the second question, that's a very good question, and I think I'll just there's a benefit to asking that question because recently the NDPC just released they just opened the application for the CDPO. So the specific I'll talk about that specific opportunity. And then I'll go back to talk about different certifications or how you can go about becoming a data protection expert or a data protection professional or a DPO specifically, data protection officer. All right. So, but then the NDPC released a publication that you can enroll for. CDPO means Certified Data Protection Officer, and it's actually a specific certification or accreditation that you can get from the IIM. The IIM and the NDPC actually collaborated to create that particular certification. So it's just like, I don't know if anybody has heard about the IPP certifications. IPP is International Association for Privacy Professionals, and they have lots of series of different certifications like the CIPPE, the CIPM, CIPT, AIGP. I have the CIPT and AIGP from IPP. That the CIPT is the Certified Information Privacy Technologist. So that is integrating privacy requirements into technical systems or into systems generally or products. Just kind of understand, combining or connecting the dots between data protection laws and systems generally. And then the IGP is the artificial intelligence governance professional. That's how to how to govern the developments, deployment and use of AI systems. So, but then coming back home, they are so I was thinking about the CDPO. So the CDPO is just like that, those certifications where there's certain resources that you need to read, and you have training as well, and then you take the exam. The certification exam, of course, it's going to cover a lot of data protection as areas. So from principles to data subjects, right, to legal bases and many other things. And specifically, this is going to be tailored towards Nigerian data protection legal frameworks. From the NDPA to the guide, General Application and Implementation Directive. So when you take that, I've seen a lot of interesting. I think there was an event I attended recently, and then I saw a lot of people talking about how they've lost opportunities because they don't have that certification. So sometimes certification open the door, but going back from what I've been saying in terms of getting the certification, the real deal will actually come in terms of what your knowledge, your skills, your capabilities, what you can actually do, which is and the best way to go about this is, there's a lot of courses out there online, from Coursera to other platforms that you can learn a lot about data protection. A lot of articles you can read. A lot of you can also talk to a lot of data protection professionals that they're ready to help you in terms of explaining some things, how some of these principles or how some of these how some of these what's it called, components of data protection, how they work in real life, right? In terms of maybe it is ROPA, that record of what was it called again? What was ROPA? Who can tell us what the meaning of ROPA is? Record of processing activities, right? Right. So I was looking for another meaning for the O. So record of processing activities, that's ROPA. And there's a lot of things that comes with ROPA. So that's one way of seeing how different areas of data protection also works together. So how to conduct a DPI and when it is needed, or what you can do before you understand that a DPI is needed or a DPI process is going to be triggered. So all of these things are what you need to learn. And there are many resources out there, as I said. Go to IPP. You find a lot of articles, a lot of resources that you can read. And one of the things I also do, I did before taking any of those certifications, is also reading some of the resources that is meant for those certifications, if they can be found online. So for the CDPI, I'm not sure the resources can be found online. But some of the resources of IPP, or asking from people that have taken it before, they could share those things with you, and then you can read. Right? There's a lot of courses on LinkedIn as well. If you can, take some of those courses, but some of them could later be paid for. But then there are lots of free resources and paid resources. So the best thing for you to start with, the best thing would be to quickly, so you can go to the NDPC website. I'll see if I can. I know I shared the link with someone recently, so I'll look it up and put it in the chat box so that everybody can take advantage of that. You can register for it and take the exam. All right, I take the course. Yeah, sorry, come again.
I'm asking, is it free or is it paid?
It's free. So it's paid mainly, but I think the one NDPC is doing it. So we have a lot of organizations. They are all DPCUs. I run a DPCU as well. A DPCU is a data protection compliance organization. There are organizations, firms, they could be law firms or different consultancy firms or technical consultancy firms that have been certified or licensed to provide data protection related services. Not really data protection related services. The main thing they've been certified to do is actually to conduct data protection audits for companies. I think any company can actually provide data protection services. So it's only the DPCUs that are also recognized to carry out the training for people. But of course, they're going to charge for that. If it is the DPCUs that are, so for them to conduct the training, conduct the CDPO training, and then for you to get the certification, you'll be charged. But I think the NDPC is also trying to organize this training. But I believe theirs is free. They're not charging anybody, because I think they're also trying to create some sort of opportunities, for people to get that certification and then to act as DPOs for organizations, right? Just I think you asked something related to that. That's you performing the role of a DPO for organizations. So when you have that certification, you can reach out to. There are many ways you can go about this. You can, you can go to, because there are lots of companies are not compliant with data protection requirements. In the law, you can look at that. You can look at their different data protection practices from. You would say, oh, if you're not a member of their company, how would you want to know all they do? Sometimes the best way is even to look at their data protection policies. So some of them could be. Some of them could be well written, but they're not doing it right. In terms of, you could see their data protection policy, and then you see that it's another thing that is being implemented when you're trying to sign up on their platform, or you could see that their data protection policy. I'm actually referring to privacy policy on their website. Privacy policy or privacy notices is not well drafted, and then you tell them that this is the implication, this is the consequences that they could find, and what have you, and you can help them with a lot of things that they might not have just through their privacy policy. You could see a lot of things that are wrong, and maybe if you go to their website, they could be doing some things that social media handles. They could be doing things that are in contradiction to data protection best practices, or even data protection provisions of the law, and you can call their attention to it and say that you can, especially if the company operates in a very sensitive sector like the medical line, or if it's a fintech, a financial, or generally in the financial space, right? Or maybe a big company that processes large sets of data. So you could actually reach out to them and prove. So there's a lot of work you'll be doing. I don't want to start talking about. I think that's everything we've been talking about, or everything we've been dealing with from the. Sorry, I couldn't. I think I need to apologize. It's a good time to apologize for not being able to join the session from the beginning. I think so. The major reason I said I have to make this is because I think none of the facilitators will be making this. So I had to just kind of step in and ensure that I make these. I'm actually supposed to be part of all the sessions from the beginning. So just go back to everything you've been taught from the beginning. That is everything that you might be required to do as a DPO, right? From advising mainly the organization that this is the type of I believe they are collecting this data. They need to abide with all the data protection principles, from data minimization to purpose limitation, right? And that's how to show accountability. And then working with the technical teams, if they have a cybersecurity system, to ensure that they are implementing technical and organizational measures to ensure that the personal data they're collecting is being protected in accordance with legal requirements. So I'm looking at, I couldn't search as I was speaking. So let me just quickly look for that link and share with you. Just a moment. So I hope that helps. I mean, before I share, could you confirm that was helpful, or if you have any question?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I saw that post, the opportunity, so it had me thinking. So that was what made me ask the question. If anyone, I saw the criteria. I mean, those that should apply, and some other eligibility criteria like that. So that made me ask the question. Answer. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope you can see it. I just shared the link. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Well, I just really hope that it's still open. Yeah, I'm just checking, and I think it's still open. Yeah, then when you're talking about the eligibility, it's good you mentioned that as well. I think some of the eligibility is in terms of your educational background. I think everybody here is a lawyer, so you have that. And then you have the motivation and interest already, right? And I think you can also demonstrate that, I mean, through your personal statements. You can write a lot of things you've done. Even you can mention this course that you've taken a course to teach you the foundational, not even foundation. I think that was even gone beyond foundation, everything you've been taught, but you've been taught the typical things you need to know about data protection, right? And of course, I believe you're familiar with take some technical skills as lawyers. Yeah, even you using the platform is a bit of a technical skill. So I think you have everything it takes to apply. Okay, so I think that'll be all. We can close the class now, I guess, if that's fine. Dennis. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the questions, and thank you for your time listening.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ridwan, for helping us run through those questions. We really, really appreciate you spending time with us here in class. Please, we've come to the end of today's session. Please do not forget to share what you have learned in the class, and do not forget to reach out to Mr. Ridwan if you have any further inquiries. You can reach out to us and we'll share his email with you so that you can get through to
I was speaking, I knew that I was muted. So I can't tell you anymore, Dennis. I'm not sure if you're still speaking, but I was just going to say thank you, everyone, again. And have a good evening and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye. I hope you can hear me, everyone.